It stands as the most powerful address in the world, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But this house, the House of Democracy, was built on muddy ground, with hope, politics, and the labor of people history almost forgot. This is not just the story of a building. It is the story of ambition, contradiction, and the American dream, brick by brick. The year was 1790. The United States was a fragile experiment. 13 colonies, newly united but deeply divided. Independence had been won, but unity was still uncertain. The question, where should the capital be? Northerners favored New York or Philadelphia. Southerners pushed for a location within their influence, tied to agriculture and slavery. Compromise was needed and struck. Alexander Hamilton agreed the federal government would assume state war debts. In return, Thomas Jefferson and Southern leaders secured a Southern capital along the Potomac River. A new city would rise from scratch. No buildings, no roads, just dense forest, humid air, and swampy terrain. President George Washington chose the exact site, land donated by Maryland and Virginia. He envisioned a capital city that embodied American ideals, strong, balanced, and new. He tapped Pierre-Charles L'Enfant, a French-born architect and veteran of the Revolution, to design it. L'Enfant imagined wide avenues, public squares, and grand sightlines, a city of symbolism, not royalty. At its heart would be a home, not a palace, but a presidential residence, functional, stately, and accessible, a symbol of democracy, a shelter for leadership. And that's where the story of the White House truly begins. With the capital location secured, attention shifted to its centerpiece, the president's house. What should it look like? What should it represent? In 1792, the federal government announced a national design competition. The goal: create a mansion for the President of the United States. Submissions poured in from across the country. Some looked like European palaces with ornate facades and sprawling grounds. Others resembled fortresses, cold, rigid, and imposing. But one design stood apart. James Hoban, a 33-year-old Irish immigrant trained in classical architecture, submitted a plan inspired by Leinster House in Dublin. His design was balanced, elegant, and republican in nature. It conveyed dignity without excess, strength without arrogance. President George Washington personally approved the design. Although he had hoped for something larger, he saw in Hoban's vision a structure that was timeless, refined, and uniquely American. Hoban was hired not only as the winning architect, but also as supervisor of construction. The chosen site rested on a slight hill overlooking the Potomac River. Workers laid foundations, quarried sandstone, and slowly raised the house that would one day symbolize democracy itself. The final plan featured 3 floors, 21 rooms, and ionic columns. It was painted white to protect the stone and became a national icon, a house not of kings, but of the people. Chapter 3, Built by Hands, History Tried to Forget. The story of the White House is often told through presidents, architects, and statesmen, but it begins with those whose names history nearly erased. While James Hoban designed the structure, the work of building it fell to laborers, many of them enslaved. To reduce costs, the federal government leased enslaved workers from Maryland and Virginia. They were carpenters, stonemasons, sawyers, and blacksmiths, paid nothing, given no credit, denied rights. They quarried sandstone from Aquia Creek, transported it by barge, and laid it block by block. They built walls, carved ornamentation, and fired bricks that still stand today. Only a few names survive: Ben, Tom, Daniel, Peter, Giles. Ledger entries: first names only, yet their work shaped the foundation of American democracy. They lived in harsh conditions, worked long hours, and endured silence in the pages of history. For generations, their contribution went untold. Schoolbooks ignored them, tour guides left them out. The focus remained on those in power, not those who built it. Today, their legacy is honored in the White House Visitor Center, but the truest monument is the White House itself, a symbol of freedom, built by those who had none. Chapter 4. A Home Begins. The story of the White House is often told through presidents and architects, but the truth begins with those whose names were nearly erased from history. While James Hoban designed the building, the physical labor fell to workers, many of them enslaved. To save money, the federal government leased enslaved laborers from Maryland and Virginia. These men were bricklayers, carpenters, stonemasons, sawyers, and blacksmiths. They worked without pay, credit, or choice. Some were trained artisans, others learned by doing. Their hands cut timber, hammered nails, shaped stone, and fired bricks. They quarried sandstone from Aquia Creek, floated it downriver, and laid it piece by piece on the muddy ground that would become the most powerful address in America. Few of their names survive: Ben, Daniel, Peter, Tom, Giles. First names on payroll ledgers, faceless but foundational. They lived in crowded quarters near the site and worked from sunrise to sunset. In harsh conditions, without protection or dignity, they built not just a structure, but a symbol, a house meant to represent freedom, built by those who had none. For generations, this story was omitted. School books skipped it, tours ignored it. Only recently has their role been acknowledged. Today, their names appear in exhibits at the White House Visitor Center, but the truest tribute is the house itself, a monument to contradiction, endurance, and the unseen hands that built a democracy's home. Chapter 5. Fire and Restoration. In 1814, the United States faced one of its darkest moments. Still a young republic, it found itself once again at war with Great Britain, but this time, the enemy marched straight into its capital. Washington, D.C. was barely defended. Militias were scattered, regular troops were elsewhere, and on August 24th, British soldiers entered the city with almost no resistance. Their goal? Strike at the heart of American power. They burned the Capitol. Then they turned toward the President's house, the White House. Flames consumed the building. Smoke blackened the sky. The roof collapsed. Only stone walls remained. It was the first and only time a foreign enemy destroyed the White House. In the chaos, First Lady Dolly Madison made history. She ordered the rescue of George Washington's portrait, a powerful symbol salvaged from destruction. By morning, the White House was a blackened ruin. Some suggested relocating the Capitol, but President James Madison stood firm. Congress funded the rebuilding. Architect James Hoban returned. By 1817, the White House stood once again, not just restored, but reborn. It wasn't just reconstruction. It was a message. This democracy would not fall to flames. The White House had burned, but it endured. Chapter 6. A house that grows with the nation. The White House was never meant to stay the same. Like the country it serves, it has evolved, shaped by conflict, innovation, and the presidents who called it home. Thomas Jefferson was the first to make changes. He added colonnades to hide stables, landscaped the grounds, and filled rooms with books and instruments, turning the house into a space of thought and function. Andrew Jackson introduced running water. James Polk brought gas lighting. Abraham Lincoln installed the telegraph, connecting the White House to Civil War battlefields and revolutionizing presidential communication. In the 20th century, change came faster. Theodore Roosevelt moved the staff into a newly built West Wing and formally named the residence the White House. William Howard Taft added the Oval Office, now one of the most iconic rooms in the world. Franklin D. Roosevelt expanded the West Wing, delivered radio fireside chats, and added a pool for physical therapy, blending duty with daily life. But the most dramatic change came under Harry Truman. With sagging floors and structural dangers, Truman ordered a full interior rebuild in the 1950s. Only the stone exterior remained. Through every renovation, the White House endured, not as a frozen relic, but as a living institution, evolving, reflecting, still becoming. Chapter 7. The People's House. Behind the gates and white columns, the White House is more than a residence. It is the home of an idea. From the beginning, it was meant to be accessible, not elite, not a palace, but a public symbol, rooted in accountability, not royalty. Yet it has always walked a line between openness and protection. Presidents have come and gone, but the people have always gathered outside its fence, in celebration, in protest, in hope. Suffragists stood in silence with banners. Civil rights marchers sang beneath its windows. Veterans, students, and everyday Americans spoke truth to power from its gates. Inside, the White House has hosted both history and humanity. Children trick-or-treating, jazz in the East Room, state dinners and solemn ceremonies. Visitors have walked its halls for over a century. School children stare at portraits. Families take in holiday trees and decor. Tourists peer into rooms where history whispered. The White House has always held space for memory and momentum. It isn't perfect. Its walls carry stories of struggle and progress alike, but it endures as one of democracy's most visible symbols, and though guarded, it still belongs to the people. Our past is in its rooms. Our future still walks toward its doors. The White House is more than walls and windows. It's more than policy briefings and official speeches. It's a mirror, reflecting both the ideals and contradictions of the American story. Within its rooms, presidents have navigated war and peace, sorrow and celebration.
It's where decisions are made and where lives unfold. Children have taken first steps on the South Lawn. Families have mourned behind its closed doors. Laughter has echoed through its dining rooms. It's not just a seat of power, it's a living home. And like any home, its meaning comes from those inside it, and those who believe in what it represents. Built by enslaved hands, shaped by visionaries and tested by time, the White House has withstood fire, scandal, protest, and change. It began as a modest mansion. Today, it's a global symbol, not because of size or wealth, but because of what it stands for, the enduring promise of democracy. This is Washington Chronicles. If this story moved you, subscribe and join us. Because the White House isn't just where history was made, it's where the American story still lives.